Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and however you're listening to the podcast. We appreciate that you are. This is the Delaware High School Football Pod, presented by Websites for Sports, and we're the only media outlet dedicated exclusively to high school football in the first state. The pod is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and also on YouTube for those who prefer to see what you're listening to. Follow us on Twitter at DELHS Football and on Facebook at the DELHS Football Pod. All right, on today's show, this is the Class 2A recaps and previews. If you're looking for Class 3 and Class 1, they're on other podcasts that drop separately, so you can certainly check them out there. We are going to let everybody know, as we did on the other podcast, that we're not going to go into specific scheduling for the semifinal games because, as we've learned over the years, they can change. As we record on Sunday morning, everyone is waiting to hear what is going to happen with the University of Delaware football team and whether or not they are going to host a game. If they had beat Villanova, they'd be off Thanksgiving weekend, and it would be easy to do schedule. And actually, that won't impact the high school schedule, but other things could. But also on the finals week, that is going to be impacted by the University of Delaware. What we can tell you is, again, the semifinals for high school football will be Friday and Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. The finals will either be Thursday and Friday, November 30th and December 1st, if UD is hosting the game. If they are not, they will be on Friday, December 1st, and Saturday, December 2nd. They will be lumped this way. The first final will be the Unified and Class 3A, and so that will either be on Thursday or Friday. The other final, Class 1 and Class 2, will be the next day, so either Friday or Saturday. So might sound confusing, but if you think it through, it's really not. The Unified and 3A are going to be the first of a two-night doubleheader. 1 and 2 will be the second of a two-night doubleheader, and that two-night doubleheader will either be Thursday and Friday or Friday and Saturday. So check out websites, 4sports.com, and we will put it out on our social media platforms as soon as that is all decided and finalized. All right, want to talk about Unified Sports real quick before we go into the Class 2 stuff. The quarterfinals took place last Thursday. The teams that advanced were Caesar Rodney, Appoquinimink, Cape, and Newark Charter. They are the number 1 through 4 teams. Caesar Rodney is the number 1 team. They will now face number 4 Appoquinimink. Cape Henlopen is the number 3 team. They will face the number 2 team, Newark Charter School. Those games will be played on Tuesday, November 28th. They will take place. One will be at Caesar Rodney High School, which is the higher seed. The other will be at Newark Charter School in their brand new football stadium. They are the higher seed of the Newark Charter Cape game. And so you can check those games out. They are completely free to get into. And again, you want to go to websites, 4sports.com. We do know they will be played on Tuesday, but we do not know what time. I can tell you Caesar Rodney likes to have a night game. So if at all possible, that will be at 6 o'clock, and Newark Charter's game will probably be either 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And so, but again, don't take my word on those. Make sure you double check those as well. All right, let's roll into the Class 2A recaps. And Marty, this was, these games weren't as high scoring as the Class 3A. So they were, we were kind of scrambling for stats and information and stuff. Yep. There just wasn't a lot out there. They also didn't get as much media coverage only because there were so many things going on at once. And so that was tough. And so that, threw a wrench into other things. But we'll start at the top of the bracket, as we've done with the other classes. Caravel takes down DMA 28-7. In the first half, Caravel jumped out to a 28-0 lead. They outgained DMA yardage-wise 175-25. And again, these were two teams that had just met. And, so it's always tough to beat the same team twice. But Coach John Reed, his team continues to roll undefeated into the semifinals with that big win over DMA.
Yeah, this was the first time they met. It was 16-8, and Caravel wasn't able to generate much offense. They tried to do some different things, throwing the ball and moving it around different ways. This time, John Reed wasn't messing around. He put the Miller kids to work in the backfield, Jordan and Craig, no relation. And he used his offensive line, which is probably the biggest strength of this team. And they just blew DMA off the line repeatedly throughout this game. And it was the top seed doing what they do best. And that's controlling the ball, keeping the other offense off of the field. And I thought this was just a great performance by the Caravel defense. Truman Awarda wasn't asked to do too much because, again, the Millers were so effective on the ground. Jordan Miller a touchdown, Craig Miller a couple touchdowns, and as you said, it was 21-0 at halftime, or 28-0. It ended up 35-7 was the final score of the Caravel did add a touchdown late in the game. But yeah, for the Seahawks, this is a great showing for them this season under Matt Carey, but they just ran into a team with that's on a mission right now. So John Reed and his kids, they did exactly what they needed to do here, nothing flashy, and they're moving on to the semifinals.
Trying to put that bitter taste out of their mouth of losing last year in the finals.
Oh,
John Reed, of
yeah.
course, won a state championship back, I think it was 1985. He was a member of the state championship, the first state championship Caravel ever won in the Division II level. So he's looking to give his players that same experience. All right, before we tell you who they'll face, we want to thank the title sponsor of the podcast, websitesforsports.com. That was started by Brian Rudder nearly 2 decades ago. It's the only place in Delaware you can find the accurate schedule and location and times of games that are played. It's got links to the Google Maps, to the stadiums where the games are being played. They've added stats this year, made it very easy for coaches or someone on the team to add stats for all the different sports. And it's a huge plus for people that follow high school football, including us media folks. And my favorite gadget that's on there is you can get alerted of schedule changes of whatever teams you're following. And usually I'm following 3 or 4 teams every season for a variety of reasons, including my kids' own schedules. And every time a schedule changes, I get alerted. So I don't have to go back and check every single day to make sure I've got the schedule right. They tell me when it changes. So again, we thank Brian Rudder for being the presenting sponsor of the podcast. That's websitesforsports.com. And that's the number 4, websitesforsports.com. All right. And what was another exciting game? Howard takes down Friends 30-28. Friends scored with 4:52 left. This game was as close as we thought, Marty. And so the Friends missed the 2-point conversion that would have tied it, and Howard hung on at the end. So the defending champs are heading home for the holidays, and Dan Ritter continues to get the most as he can out of his teams, and they continue to slog along. And they'll be doing what every high school team dreams about doing, practicing on Thanksgiving morning.
That's right. And this was we talked in the preview last week. We said if Howard can get their D together, their defense, they've got a shot. They did it just long enough in this game. It was 30-14 for a while, and then Friends, of course, mounted a comeback, which I attribute more to the fact that Friends is a very good football team.
Yes,
the Howard defense did all they could, and they stopped the 2-point conversion, which is all they needed in the end. R.J. Matthews, we're used to seeing him throwing the ball all over the yard. He ran for 4 touchdowns in this game. So they're showing they can do things a number of different ways. Howard, to me, is one of the more dangerous seeds in any of the 3 classes, because you just don't know what you're going to get. When they're at their best, they could win the championship this year. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. For Friends, this was a disappointing ending. They were hoping to repeat, but a great showing for them. But Dan Ritter has his kids raring to go right now, and Howard looks like a team on a mission.
All right, we'll see if that mission will continue beyond the Thanksgiving weekend. That's the top of the bracket in 2A. Here's the bottom of the bracket. Woodbridge with a 14-7 win over Laurel. And Marty, this was one of those games that was tough to find on Twitter. I was trying to follow the game and just tough to see. Laurel led 7-6 early in the 4th quarter, but Tracy Johnson's 2-yard touchdown ended up being the game winner for Woodbridge. For Woodbridge, it was their 2nd win over Laurel this season, and they are hoping to head back to Delaware Stadium, where 2 years ago they lost to Archmere in the state championship game. So Marvin Dooley's got his team. We've talked about them all season, about how they've kind of flown under the radar. If going from the state championship 2 years ago to not a good season last year, nobody thought where they would be. None of us should have ever questioned Coach Marvin Dooley, who, by the way, was recently inducted into the Delaware Softball Hall of Fame. He's quite an adult softball player, apparently.
I played with and against Marvin for many years. Yeah.
So anyway, a great win for Coach Dooley, who picked up his 100th win on week 10. So this would be his 101st win as a coach in Delaware. Or not in Delaware. He also coached over in Pennsylvania for 1 or 2 seasons, coached at Christiana, coached at William Penn and St. Elizabeth, and has probably landed in his final place, I would think, but we'll see, at Woodbridge. So 14-7 win, they advance.
This is interesting because you have two coaches, Marvin and Joey Jones, who don't like mistakes, so they don't put the ball in the air very much. This game ended before Sally started the fourth quarter, the Sally Smyrna game. When I finally got the score, I'm like, "This can't be over, right?" And they were like, "Yeah, this is the final. It ended." Apparently, there were very, very few passes in this game, if any. Tracy Johnson said, "Laurel, what a great season! They're first in 2A, and they had Woodbridge on the ropes. Just weren't able to put them away." Tracy Johnson comes up with the touchdown, the 2-point conversion. And we talked about it last week when they were 2-8 last year. There was just no way that was going to sit with a Marvin Dooley team. I don't think we saw the turnaround that was coming this year. To have them in the semifinals and playing the way they're playing, they're playing sound fundamentally, and they're playing great defense. So it's going to be interesting. I think the sky's the limit for Woodbridge. They, this 2A is another one that you think after Caravel, but you never know. They're
Yeah.
kids, and
Yep.
once they get in these games, you never know what's going to happen. So congratulations to Marvin and Woodbridge for their trip to the semifinals.
All right, before we talk about who they're going to play, if you're looking to buy or sell your house, Mary Kate Johnson with Remax Associates will help you do so as if it was her own. She's been in the real estate business for more than 20 years to help my wife and I sell our home and purchase our new one. We've recommended her to dozens of friends who have done the same once they've experienced her. Doesn't matter whether you're upsizing, downsizing, could be for you, a friend, a relative, someone else, doesn't matter. Mary Kate Johnston will help you as if it was her own home. She works incredibly hard to get customer satisfaction, and she's done so. And you can read about that at her website, which is marykatej.remax.com. That's marykatej.remax.com. 5-star realtor with lots of great reviews. Make sure you check it out. That's Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates. All right, we mentioned Woodbridge losing in the state championship 2 years ago to Archmere, and they're taking on the Auks to try to get back to Delaware Stadium as Archmere takes down Red Lion 35-16. Archmere's back on the map, Marty. We kind of all, ever since Chris Albero left, they've kind of lost their touch with John Belace's crew,
Yep.
but he's got him back in the semifinals, one step away from reaching the state championship game. Red Lion loses in the quarterfinals for the second year in a row. They've got several key players back next year, so Coach Kenny Anderson's program's in a good place. He had talked to me throughout the season, and early in the season, he thought this might be the year that they take that next step. And I'm pretty sure when he said that, he didn't mean win a state championship, but he meant to have a second very good, solid season with a shot to get to Delaware Stadium. And they did. They just
did.
unfortunately ran into an Archmere team that's playing as well as they've played in the last 2 years, really.
Yeah, this Archmere team was 1-3, and I know I wrote them off. They just too many good teams in 1A to come back from that, or 2A to come back from that, and they did. And they've put together a tremendous winning streak since. Brendan Burke, 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was crazy because it was 8-7 Red Line with about 10 minutes to go before halftime. And the next thing I look up and it's halftime and it's 27-8 Archmere. So in those 10 minutes, Archmere went nuts. And then they just kind of coasted at that point. Their defense took over in the second half. The running game took over. Miles Kemsky was perfect in this game. 5 of 5 passing for 120 yards and a touchdown. Also ran for 50 yards. PJ Blessington was big on the defensive side of the ball. They were really able to contain Red Lion. And Gavin Lee, 71 receiving yards and a touchdown. So Archmere was able to move the ball around several different ways, and their defense played really, really well, and that's going to be a key for them. But John Belace and his guys from 1-3 to the state semifinals in 2A, amazing accomplishment.
So congratulations to them. We'll talk about the games they're going to play next in just a minute. But first of all, athletes of all ages, unleash your potential with the Win the Day Planner, your key to building winning habits for a lifetime. This planner was put together by a longtime wrestling coach, Dan Rigby, who led both Caesar Rodney and Milford High School to multiple state championships itself and 3 titles combined. And he's coached athletes of all abilities and in different sports, not just wrestling and not just superstars and not just high school kids. So this Win the Day Planner can come in an 18-week session or a 42-week one. Also, there's one especially for wrestling that he has put together. And it doesn't just help you become a better athlete, but a better teammate and a better person. My son has one, and it helps athletes plan their day, everything from what are my goals, what chores do I have to get done, what homework do I have to do, and how many bottles of water I'm going to drink, as just an example. And it really is good for us adults, even if we're not playing sports. We should probably do the same thing. You can get your print or digital copy today at winthedayplanner.com. Again, that's winthedayplanner.com. And that brings us to our Grain Gridiron top performer in Class 2A for the quarterfinal round of the playoffs. You probably have heard of Grain Restaurants. They're all over the state of Delaware. They're in Newark on Main Street, Newark in the Star Campus across from Delaware Stadium. They're in Trolley Square in Wilmington, at the Summit Marina on the C&D Canal, in Lewis at the Ferry Terminal, and they have a place in Kennett Square as well. People go to hang out. People have social clubs there, book clubs, or they just go out to eat, and they usually go back, if not to the same one of their other restaurants around the state. It's got menus, got some usuals, some peculiars, but best of all, you never leave hungry. My favorite part of Grain is it was started by two local guys, Jim O'Donohue and Lee Michaels, and they not only support the podcast, and we really appreciate that, but they support the community. They support nonprofits. They support travel teams, little league teams, you name it. They support it, and they haven't forgotten where they've come from. Their tremendous success in the restaurant business, and they've helped support the community through that. And Marty, I'll let you announce the Grain Gridiron top performer in Class 2A quarterfinal week.
We talked about this young man a bit last week. He had the unenviable task of replacing pretty much a legend in Chris Albero. But Miles Kempsky has put together a really solid season, and it kind of came to a head for him in this game. He was perfect. Again, 5 for 5 passing, 120 yards and a touchdown. He rushed for 50 yards. By all counts, he did a fantastic job directing the offense, the ball control offense that once they built up a lead, they were able to keep Red Lion off of the field. So for his efforts in this game, helping to get Archmere, to the semifinals. Miles Kempsky from Archmere is our Grain Gridiron top performer.
So congratulate to him. We will get a gift card to head coach John Belace, which is what we do because the players are not eligible to receive a gift of monetary value. So congratulations to Archmere quarterback Miles Kempsky. That brings us to the Diamond Hill top performance of the week. Diamond Hill Incorporated is celebrating their 20-year anniversary here in Delaware this year. They've been serving all of Delaware and the surrounding areas in all things construction, from commercial concrete and site development to residential projects. They have you covered. If you want more information, you can email them at info@diamondhillinc.com. That's info@diamondhillinc.com. All right, my top performance of the week, Marty, is the Caravel backfield of Craig Miller and Jordan Miller. You mentioned them scoring 2 touchdowns each, and that was the difference in the win over DMA. And so the backfield of Caravel Academy, Craig Miller and Jordan Miller, and I do not believe they are related. I think I've asked John Reed that question. Yep. So they're not cousins, not brothers, but they are one heck of a running back duel. So congratulations to Craig Miller and Jordan Miller, one of our 2 Diamond Hill top performances of the week.
Mine, I'm going to go with, and I stayed in the same game, I'm going to go with the Caravel offensive and defensive lines. They opened the holes for those Millers and did a really nice job controlling the line of scrimmage against DMA and getting pressure on Odell Teal and stopping that running game at DMA. So the Caravel offensive defensive line are my selections, the Diamond Hill top performance unit.
All right, we move on to the 2A semifinals. And again, these games will be played either Friday or Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. Times to be determined. If they're on Friday, it'll be in the evening. Caravel does have lights, so that game could be played at night. Marty, does Archmere have lights?
They do not.
They do not. So that game would have to be played on Saturday at a time to be determined. They're not going to schedule those games on Friday, even though a lot of people are on vacation and off. Not everybody is. So that's a smart move by the DIAA. So again, you want to check out Websites for Sports. That's the number 4, websitesforsports.com, for updated schedule information. And we will get it out as soon as those things are made official on our websites as well. So number 1, Caravel is going to host number 5, Howard. They played in the regular season, week 2. Caravel won 56-34. At that time, Howard became a 0-2 team because they had lost to Hodson in their opener up at Apocinio Stadium as part of that tournament. Caravel had an easy win in the quarterfinals. Not so much for Howard. They were battle-tested in the quarterfinals, squeaked out a win by 2 when Wilmington Friends missed that 2-point conversion we just talked about. And I looked at their schedules, Marty. Howard is much more battle-tested than Caravel. And by battle-tested, I mean they had 5 wins that they won by less than a touchdown. And if you look at Caravel's, to their credit, Caravel's schedule, and you look at that, a lot of their wins were by a lot more than 6 points. So if you're one of these, well, which team is more battle-tested, Howard would get that nod. But again, Caravel beat Howard 56-34 in one of those battles in week 2 of the season.
Well, I'm glad you said that because it leads into my point here. They gave up 34 points that day, Caravel did. In the 8 games since, they've given up a total of 40. So they're giving up 5 points a game since that game against Howard. At the time, I remember we said, Howard, the offense is there. Obviously, they scored 34 points against a good Caravel defense. We wondered whether the defense would be. There have been moments the defense has been really good this season. There have also been moments that give me pause, and that is, I'm looking at their schedule, allowed 30 to a depleted Lake Forest, 25 to Odessa, 27 to Mount Pleasant. If they get their defense in order, now this is not to say they couldn't win a shootout, because they could,
right.
but I think they're far more likely to win if they can keep the score down. If the Howard defense is able to get it together and keep this game in the 20s, I really think they have a great shot to upset Caravel. I still think Caravel is far and away the best team right now in 2A. However, when you have RJ Matthews as your quarterback, Dan Ritter's your head coach, you've got a number of good young athletes on that team. It still would surprise me, but I could see it happening if Howard were to pull it off. Again, the task of beating a team twice in the same season is tough to do, and these Howard kids, they're fired up.
Right.
They're going to come out and give everything they got here. The next loss for Howard will be RJ Matthews' last game. I know he doesn't want to end.
No.
So this could be a really fun game this weekend. It could end up in a shootout, but I think it's more likely that Howard gets their defense in order and brings us to a more manageable game. And I'm expecting a great game.
2 great coaches, John Reed and Dan Ritter, who couldn't be happier that they've got to leave the house Thursday morning and not go to a turkey bowl and go to their own football practice instead. So it should be a great one. All right, on the other side of the bracket, it's number 2 Archmere and number 3 Woodbridge. Again, a rematch of the 2021 state championship won by Archmere. This game will be played on Saturday, and it will have to be played during the day because it's at Archmere. And as Marty just said, there are no lights at Archmere. They did not play each other this year. If you're a common opponent type of guy, they both played Howard. Archmere beat Howard. Woodbridge lost to Howard. They also both played Friends. Archmere beat Friends. Woodbridge lost to Friends. Probably doesn't mean a whole lot at this point in the season, but just wanted to point that out.
This is going to be an interesting game because it's really a clash of styles. Archmere can get it done in any different number of ways. Woodbridge is going to run the ball down their throat. They're going to use some misdirection at times, trapping and pulling on the offensive line. Woodbridge 3-0 in games decided by 1 possession. So they've been battle tested, to your point, in the last game as well. They're going to run at you from every which way. Special teams, I think this could come down to if it's a low scoring game, and the Auks have a big advantage there because they have Cole Finese, their field goal kicker, and their punter, who has done a phenomenal job doing both of those, handling both of those jobs during the season. So this could be a fun game. I'm anticipating more of a grind in this game. It's going to be low scoring. And again, I think that special teams could play in the end, but this should be a good one. Tracy Johnson, if he can get going on the offensive side for Woodbridge, he's very difficult to bring down. The Archmere defense has been very solid since that 1-3 start. So another fun semifinal matchup.
All right, so your semifinals in Class 2A, Caravel and Howard, Woodbridge and Archmere. That brings us to the Marticelli Restaurant Group trivia question. The Marticelli Restaurant Group owns the Chesapeake Inn, Klondike Kate's, and La Casa Pasta. All 3 restaurants known for different dishes. You can enjoy signature crab cakes and other fresh seafood at the Chesapeake Inn, homemade pasta and seafood specialties at La Casa Pasta, or Klondike Kate's famous cheesesteak egg rolls and nachos. We can't thank the Marticelli Group enough for supporting our podcast and, in turn, supporting high school football. Marty, this week's trivia question.
And for those listening, to be clear, this isn't a 2A trivia question or 1A or 3A. We have one trivia question across the 3 podcasts, so we want everyone to have a chance to answer. On November 10th of this season, Appo became a member of an exclusive club. Since 2008, only 4 teams have ever gone into Middletown and beaten the Cavaliers on their home field. Appo took their place among Sally's, William Penn, and a 4th team. And this was not an easy one to find. For a chance at a Marticelli Group gift card, who is that 4th team? The one of only 4 since 2008, since Obama became president, to beat Middletown in their home stadium.
All right, there
When you
you
I'm
have it.
sorry, the
Yep.
answer, send your answer to delhsfootball@gmail.com, or send it to John or I in a DM on Twitter or Facebook. Make sure you don't put the answer on social media, but that's our Marticelli Group trivia question.
All righty, and that puts an end to the Class 2A quarterfinal recaps and semifinal previews. Thanks to our sponsors, Grain Restaurant, Marticelli Restaurant Group, Diamond Hill Incorporated, Mary Kate Johnston with Remac Associates, Dan Rigby, author of the Win the Day Plan, and of course, the presenting sponsor of the podcast, websitesforsports.com. That's the number 4, websitesforsports.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DELHS Football and Facebook at the DELHS Football Pod. And yes, I realize Twitter is now X. I just haven't gotten used to that yet. Please like and share our podcast wherever you listen and follow it, and help us spread the word about the great sport of high school football here in Delaware. Until next time, for Marty Sheehan, I'm John Buzby. Have a great sports week.